Welcome back to the Nutrimedical Report, and one of my favorite guests to bring on the program, probably one of the most environmentally knowledgeable doctors in the world, the founder of the Environmental Health Center of Dallas, the EHCD.com, Environmental Health Center Dallas, Dr. William Ray, who also is one of the founders of the American Academy of Environmental Medicine with his colleagues. This is what I call the 7-star clinic. If you're really sick, if you've got really complex problems with implant syndromes, mold exposure, irritable bowel syndrome, chemical exposures, Gulf War syndrome, mental toxicity, surgical procedure sensitivities like the mesh, electromagnetic sensitivities, dental amalgams or other materials such as the fluoridated compounds they use to replace amalgams, neurotoxicity, immunological dysregulation, vasculitis, dysautonomia. I mean, you name it, they have methods of evaluating, and of course all kinds of technologies such as breath analysis for 1,000 chemicals that's available, all kinds of technologies for evaluating electropollution. Dr. William Ray, tell us, the list of things that can impinge on people and destroy their health and their lives is expanding. It's bad to be a prophet of doom, but in fact you're also a prophet of, if you want to call it, of opportunities to fix the problem. I don't think it's a stretch to say if people don't detoxify like Dr. Sherry Rogers, they die. And our world is so toxic now. Yeah, and I think the problem is right now they don't realize this is not just an alternative for the people that are decompensating. The people that are in their zone of compensation are just months and years away from a crisis that's going to push them over the edge and cause an autoimmune disease, a cancer, or a loss of organ function, or tip them into diabetes or God knows what. Yeah. And your clinic is able to do that. And I don't really think anybody should consider themselves a health professional, whether an acupuncturist, an MD, a surgeon, a DO, a chiropractor, unless they've been trained in environmental medicine.
And well, I would agree with that because it is complex and it does influence how one does. And like you say, the new data coming up is that the cell phones, smart meters, the Wi-Fi and everything are massively increasing the cancers. And also just arteriosclerosis and neurodegenerative diseases. And, I just had a young physician, about 35 years old, who had a hole in her brain, in her head on the brain scan from holding the phone. She raised her kids by that telephone all the time, while she was practicing. And we got a brain scan on her, and she had that hole all right where the phone was.
Wow. And, of course, that hole basically is astroglial fallout with the microglial activation of free radicals, peroxynitrate, that literally cause the astroglial cells to die, and you actually get a physical hole where the cell phone is beaming in radiation to that area of the brain. It's really...
Doesn't that really tell you something, too? I mean,
it does.
My gosh. Now, I must say, we've treated her now she's did what we told her to do for about 5 years, and she's totally well now.
Wonderful.
But that's really the cell phone.
I bet. And, of course, she's taking things to protect her. Remember, what you've done is moved her back into a zone of compensation. It doesn't mean... I don't like to use the word cure. I talk about putting people in a position where they're back in a zone where they can compensate, where they can heal, where they can... And if they decompensate because they get another load of toxins or they stop the behaviors that protected them, they're going to slide backward and maybe have a new catastrophic event.
Oh, yeah. You couldn't pay her to get exposed constantly to anything anymore, because she knows. And that's what the idea is to get the people away from the toxics and EMF and then let them heal and then teach them how to perceive the cause and effect of whatever they eat or whatever they drink or whatever they get exposed to. And that's the key.
Now, when you do an evaluation, it's pretty involved. You're measuring toxic chemicals in their breath. You're measuring all kinds of reflexes. You've brought machines over from Japan and elsewhere to look at dysautonomia. You've got all kinds of technologies to look at brain function, including positron emission scans and quantitative EEG, etc. SPECT scans for brain blood flow. And, I mean, it's pretty involved. A lot of people don't realize just how advanced the science is on this. This is not speculation, and it should not be considered alternative medicine. This is integrative molecular functional biochemistry that whether you're recovering from a surgical procedure, for example, you're a heart surgeon by previous trade.
Yes, I'm an ex-heart surgeon, and I believe in facts. And I also believe in technology, because we used it to push the field of heart surgery ahead. And
one of the things
same with the chemical problem, environmental problem. We've got to use technology to push it ahead, but you have to be very careful that you don't hurt people while you're using the technology.
Right, and one of the things is nowadays, the conventional doctors, what they do is they're far too quick to think once a person is on a certain pathway that they're ultimately going to deteriorate. A good example, we did a study back in 1987-88 when I was working in Georgia with one of the Holter companies, and we found that 1/3 of males over age 30 had silent coronary artery spasm on a months-long Holter study. It's my theory now that cardiac disease, coronary artery spasm, actually produces plaque, is caused by oxidized fatty acids at the specific points in the heart, and they've got a metabolic problem at that specific segment of artery that's due to coenzyme Q10, the electron chain, and again, this all fits in with every environmental illness and even cancer. There's a common final pathway.
What you say is true, and what's interesting, there were 3 articles just came out in Circulation, the American Heart Journal, on microvascular disease. And, of course, we've been treating microvascular disease for 30 years and finding the triggering agents. And they've come to the conclusion, just like you said, that the microvascular disease probably comes first. And even though they don't get plaque there, they get vascular spasm.
Yeah, the spasm precedes the plaque.
Right, and there's 2 ways it can go. One way it can go for plaque, and the other way it can go is that it'll develop just chronic inflammation and fibrosis and hyperreactivity and chemical sensitivity.
Right, exactly.
And so it's all there now.
Exactly, and of course, when we're seeing people, like we're seeing a massive explosion of, say, coronary artery disease and congestive heart failure, they're just signs to me of environmental degradation. Bisphenol A, chemicals interfere with CoQ10, with the electron chain, for example, like acetylcarnitine and propanolcarnitine. These are deficient because your liver and your kidneys make them. And the problem is the same with environmental illness. When we look at, the latest research article, which I'll be sending you from National Library of Medicine, that Namil Detoffel sent me a copy of these articles from his research. And what's amazing, it talks about selenium protecting the brain against cell phones. And it's got 900 megahertz, and we know it's just glutathione peroxidase. So if you could take a Linus Pauling field ion scanner, which he theorized back 40 years ago, and I actually came up with an idea how to make one with a radiologist up in Los Angeles 4 years ago when I was up there doing a talk. A field ion scanner would literally create a model like an MRI scan, but it would actually look at the ion field and color scale it based on the intermediate metabolically, so you could actually see the ion field in the plasma state of a specific biomolecule, and you'd see a color scale and do even videography on it, seeing the metabolic pattern. So if you looked at somebody's heart or brain, you'd see literally areas where you got high amounts of certain free radical intermediates. You'd see oxidative stress to cell membranes. You'd see DNA breaks and ducts present. And the problem is we don't approach it that way systematically and realize, why doesn't somebody heal from surgery? Why is someone continuing to deteriorate with congestive heart failure until they die, even though you throw lots of drugs at them? Why do diabetics continue to deteriorate even though we give them all kinds of meds? Because we don't fix the problem. We just
That's right. You haven't gotten the cause. And as you well know, that now it's been shown that there's leaks in the micro blood vessels. And when these leaks occur, you get magnesium or get calcium and sodium going intercellularly,
right.
And that combines with protein kinase A and C, and
right.
Then when it's phosphorylated, it increases the sensitivity of the whole area 1,000 times. And so anything that might have been done in the past and you were still resistant to it, you lose your resistance and you get hypersensitive.
Exactly. In other words, magnesium deficiency, ion channel damage, all tied in, and there are all these illnesses that have got common factors all behind them all.
Yeah.
Amazing. I love how your mind works to analyze these things, which is why the clinic is so good. Back in a moment with Dr. William Ray, ehcd.com, the Environmental Health Center, Dallas. In just a moment. Welcome back, and one of the biggest challenges, Dr. Ray, you started off looking at anesthetics effect, which affected your own personal health, the effect of chemicals in the environment, heavy metals that are in our water, air. I quoted you saying that there's 7 new chemicals literally every day, roughly, that are entering the troposphere worldwide from industry, not only here, but in India, Indonesia, etc. Now we've got genetically modified food, new invented chemicals every day, and also now radiotoxins from Fukushima Daiichi, and of course every reactor is giving off thorium and tritium. Here in Japan, what's going on is this constant open wound is getting worse and worse. The shorter-acting isotopes continue to be released, so we're seeing fresh radioiodine-131, which has 4 half-lives. It's gone in about a month. But it's a continuous stream. But the longer isotopes bioaccumulate, the ones that last 30-plus years, like strontium and cesium-137, strontium-90.
Yeah, you see, we're seeing that, Bill. Matter of fact, it's quite interesting that when we look at the mineral analysis of patients, we'll see the cesium and the thorium and so on. And I always say, well, you must be living west of the Rockies because we don't see it hardly in the people east of the Rockies, you know?
Yeah, and of course, the pattern that we're seeing is that it hits the areas up around the northern United States, just south of the Canadian border, sometimes surges above into Canada, then it comes along the Rocky Mountains, and then it'll shoot across sometimes over to the central Midwest and then back up toward the northeast, which is why it can end up in Vermont. But it's a pretty high atmosphere. I proposed to Senator Dianne Feinstein and Senator Wyden in Oregon that they put data logging radiation detectors to send back data, live data basically on the flight paths of the airliners so that they could determine with the compression of air inside the cabin what the counts per minute were. Then they'd have a bottle sent off to do a radioisotope spectral analysis using gamma spectroscopy, neutron spectroscopy, so they could actually fingerprint exactly what isotopes are showing up then. What's going to happen now in the next few years is the bioaccumulation of these long-acting isotopes. So we set up our site here in Vista, California, and a number of other sites. Pacifica, California, Ashland, Oregon, and Portland, Oregon are already set up. We're setting up one in Colorado and one soon possibly in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, to actually measure gamma. And we're looking for cesium-137 specifically because we think it's the best marker for these longer isotopes. The other ones are going to continue to come. Radioiodine, the level of benign thyroid nodules and thyroid cancer, depending on the state, has gone up 400 to 800% right across the U.S.
Yeah, I can believe that. That also takes more iodine, doesn't it?
Yeah, and the radioiodine is a direct mitochondrial attack. That's why our Tesla-activated diatomic iodine is very powerful. And our antioxidants, these are not optional anymore. People aren't taking radiation detection. As they bioaccumulate, we know that cesium causes massive increase in polyglandular failure, breast cancer, and anywhere where magnesium and potassium occur, including the cardiac muscle for arrhythmias, atrial fibrillation, coronary spasm, hypertension. And of course, because it's polyglandular, we're going to see explosion of diabetes, thyroid failure, adrenal gland failure, and many other problems. So it's just a nightmare. And it's hard to convince even other doctors that this is a problem.
I know, well, because everybody keeps it so quiet. You know, you don't ever hear about this on the radio or TV, do you? I mean, to me, it's almost like it's a blackout, you know?
Right. Well, I propose
we should be announcing it every day, shouldn't we?
Yeah, what we should do is like the Framingham study. They should have populations, captive populations in different areas where they're measuring blood sampling, maybe even a bone marrow draw, but doing sampling to find out where they're bioaccumulating and which isotopes are showing up in their system. You've got, in a sense, a database now because when you're doing mineral analysis, you're finding people west of the Rockies are showing up long-acting isotopes starting to bioaccumulate. But I think in 5 years, the things that are happening to the Japanese people right now, like bleeding gums, infertility, mental illness, cardiac arrhythmias, stopping growth. For example, these kids from Fukushima, they're not producing growth hormone. They're not growing. They've got dysbiosis and leaky gut. They've got polyglandular failure, cardiac arrhythmias, muscle wasting, decreased IQ, all kinds of nasty things happening to them. And people here in America just think, well, that's over there. We're 5,500 miles or more from the East Coast.
It's crazy. And you would think with any other public health thing, the feds would be right there informing everybody, but it seems like it's a total quiet, isn't it?
Right, and they're not doing anything technically to stop it. I keep on hearing these stupid... Yeah, well, they keep on saying they can't do anything. Well, we've come up with our ideas on specific technical solutions to what can be done, and it'll be in the book that I'll be sending a copy over to you in the disc form later on, and we'll hope to have it up on, and we'll discuss it at the conference in your open hearing at the end of the environmental conference in New Mexico coming in October 7th, I think, is the date.
Mm-hmm. Good.
That's a really big issue. I think that the radiation thing is going to really cap off the dangers along with electro pollution like smart meters. And the smart meters, you're an expert on that because I'm getting ready to file a federal class action suit. And people want to know the grounds, and of course it's not open to other people to join it. The first ground is number one, the federal law only allows people to opt in if they want to get it. So in other words, it didn't allow state licensing authorities. The second is they use what's called thermal standards rather than non-thermal
standards. You
standards.
can't use thermal standards. I mean, that's the big problem is non-thermal standards.
Right. And the third is unjust enrichment. So what they did is they actually were charging you for a service that you previously got where they just read your meter. And they're basically, whether it's $10 a month or whatever. So we have the state authorities putting people in physical danger with these smart meters. They also actually put property in danger. I found out they dump dirty electricity that can cause breaks of water mains. Dirty electricity can actually erode gas lines. And they pulse electricity down the line. We've got proof now that the San Bruno fire in Northern California was actually triggered off by a smart meter that was pulsing electricity back down and ignited the gas fire when those gas lines blew. So we've actually talked to the people involved that presented the evidence in court, and we know smart meters were directly involved with triggering off that massive explosion that killed all those people.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's a big problem, and people think, well, that's not a problem. It's even going to destroy utilities, because what happens is it sets up ground currents that actually can speed the degradation of water line mains, of gas lines, and other things that are buried cables.
Yeah, that's the thing. The ground currents are starting. You have to ground all electricity, of course. And the question is, the ground currents are starting to get full. And as you say, they can cause explosions and fires if there's too much. And of course, the other thing is, if they're near a military base, they seem to be tremendously worse.
Yeah, the thing is, they're using much higher energy to connect with satellites and other types of communication. And these military bases, a lot of them are actually using power that's coming off the general power lines, which means if the power lines go down because of ground currents or EMP warfare, which if we go to a conflict with Iran, they've already been testing for 25 plus years, barges or fishing boats that can fire off at 200 miles off the coast, 120,000 foot small micro nuke with an EMP type pulse, and it can destroy 1,500 radio miles of satellites, cell phone towers, and ground-based power line communications. It probably won't hit cars, but it'll fry your cell phone, your power lines, and your television and radio, and your internet. So environmental issues are really getting hot. I mean, I don't know how many doctors realize how serious this is, or health professionals, but if you don't know this stuff, you can't really consider yourself a health professional, even if you're an emergency doctor, because a lot of stuff is going to present itself in weird ways now. Thanks for allowing me to be on. I'll be glad. Come back, and Dr. Ray had to run to see a number of his patients at the EHC, the Environmental Health Center, Dallas. I'm going to take open lines now, but I'm going to continue our dialogue on some of our amazing, if you want to call it responses or protocols, I've put together with a great deal of work to deal with many different, very complex disorders. We're detoxifying the body from mercury amalgams to dealing with breast cancer, prevention of chronic lung disease from causing scar tissue. You have one lady who recently had exposures back before 2011, or I think around 2009, to cleaners where they exploded with ammonia gas from combining an ammonia cleaner with a chlorinated cleaning compound, and caused basically a massive surge that destroyed her lungs. She ended up with a high diffusion coefficient, with chronic lung inflammation, and with basically a form of asthmatic bronchitis. You could see she had a lot of airway spasm on top of fibrotic lung changes due to the inflammation in the lungs. So we're going to use enzymes to break up the scar tissue, such as Inflamex, which includes the serrapeptase enzyme. We're using anti-inflammatories such high-dose glutathione, Nutritrala, and cell detox glutathione, and selenium. We're using fatty acids to repair the lung membranes, and we're using things to reduce cytokine levels like Allergon, Allerblock, high-dose Power C, and full vitamin K2, etc. What will happen is we are hoping to reduce her DLCO, which is her diffusion capacity block in her lungs. We're hoping to improve the elasticity of her lung tissue by reducing the scar tissue. We're hoping to reduce the cytokine levels, which cause airway spasm of the respiratory bronchioles, so our airways will open up. And we're hoping that our flow volume loop test, which is a conventional test done by pulmonologists or internists, and medical doctors that that'll improve her DLCO, her diffusion capacity, and her flow volume. Those are conventional tests that can be done. We can also measure advanced levels of oxygen under stress if we actually look just at her pulse ox, or if we put her through a stress like treadmill test to see what her levels of desaturation occur at various levels that we call METs, or exercise. So that's a way of actually conventionally seeing if what we did is beneficial to this lady. And she's had long-standing problems for a number of years, so we're not going to make a cure, but we're hopefully going to get her a significant amount of improvement that we can stabilize her lung condition and prevent further progression of scar tissue, inflammation, and changes to her lungs. So it's a big, tall order, but we'll do everything we can. I recommend this lady will also be using advanced technologies such as SomaPulse, Lumen Photon, ProLine Infrared Sauna, hyperbaric oxygen, which is very important, and I would recommend her have augmentation with a oxygen concentrator too, so she gets a little higher oxygen in the home oxygen, hyperbaric dives chamber, so she can get up to high 20s, say 28% to 30% plus levels, 31% of oxygen in the hyperbaric chamber. You don't need to go higher. That's basically going to have a dramatic effect if she has 1 to 2 hours a day of hyperbaric oxygen at home, and it'll help her make a significant recovery. We had a recent request also for an updated protocol for multiple sclerosis. MS basically is where the body attacks the myelin sheath, the sheath around the nerve fibers, and you only need 3 or 4 laters for the nerves to start reconducting at high speed, called saltatory nerve conduction. We use sphingolin, which is myelin basic protein, to make the gut cells stop producing activated lymphocytes that will attack the myelin sheath, usually in what's called the periventricular area of the 4th and 3rd ventricles of the brain. And the sphingolin, 2 capsules 3 times a day. We use Allergon and Allerblock to block the cytokines, cell defense to turn off the inflammation that occurs with activated monocytes and lymphocytes, Nutrifos and Neurogen to re-stimulate the formation of myelin sheaths along with Omega Supreme Krill, Omega Cod Liver Liquid, to stop the free radicals which occur in MS, which is a free radical disease, basically peroxynitrate and hydroperoxy radical, cell detox glutathione, Nutritrella, Regenerex, and of course the use of selenium cruciferate, very important. We also want to increase, it's turned out that if you increase levels of norepinephrine and dopamine, and the production through use of Nerival, which is acetyltyrosine, and BH4 biopterin, the Nerival has a little bit of biopterin in it, and of course adding the cofactors that help for methylation, including bio-LVR. You can also use S-adenosylmethionine because methylation pathways are delayed or deficient in people with MS. And if you can improve myelination by methylation with S-adenosylmethionine, so you take a sachet, open it up, put it in their mouth or under the gums once a day, first thing in the morning. It'll help dramatically with improving myelination. The energetics of the brain, you want to use CoQ10, ubiquinol, acetylcarnitine or ALC-1000, and D-ribose. You avoid food allergens. It's very important to get a food allergen testing done. You can go to labtestingdirect.com and do a full IgG and IgE panel. It'll tell you what foods to avoid. I recommend avoiding, of course, alcohol, genetically modified foods, sulfites, that is, aspartame, Splenda, and MSG. And, of course, recommend a low glycemic index diet and a ketogenic diet that gives medium-chain triglycerides, things such as you'll find in coconut milk that's non-sweetened, by the way, when the non-sweetened form. And, of course, our products, Ageless, Energize, Ageless, Life Support, NutriComplete, Omega Cod Liver Liquid, and Nutridyne, because oftentimes you'll find hypothyroidism as well, or thyroid resistance syndrome. So mitothyroid and adrenal support are often very helpful in MS. And protectant of tissues is magnesium intracellular levels, so magnesium glycinate, malate, and magnesium potassium citrate, because low levels of potassium and magnesium especially are very cytoprotective. Hyperbaric oxygen, very helpful, transcranial SomaPulse and Lumen Photon therapy. And the mild hyperbaric oxygen is very, very helpful for improving. If there's any toxic chemicals in the body and heavy metals, you want to be chelating those out with Keeler Max and liquid zeolite. That can be tested with the QRMA machine. And then later on, more advanced testing, say done at Genova Labs or at Great Plains Laboratory, that can actually measure all the heavy metals and the regular metals inside red cells, whole blood, stool, urine, etc. So there's ways of actually validating if those other cofactors are present. A lot of times they're triggered off by Lyme or Lyme-like parasites, so we usually will add antipathogenics. It turns out there's a great deal of theory that suggests that Lyme-like organisms may be the primary trigger in the northern hemisphere, which is why certain latitudes are present, which are the high concentrations of these Lyme-like parasites present, and that the anti-Lyme antibodies may actually be homologous or look very similar to the myelin sheath of nerve fiber oligodendrocytes, which is the cells that lay down the myelin sheath. So their homology means a similar peptide sequence, so the body will attack those areas as well. So that's important to understand. That's the current theory behind what triggers off multiple sclerosis. And you can monitor it with T1-weighted MRI scans, quantitative EEGs, SPECT blood flow scans, and positron emission tomography. Best test, I think, to measure it is the quantitative EEG and to look at SPECT scans, but look at the brain blood flow. More advanced tests, including the including the positron emission tomograms, very helpful, very expensive, and you have to make sure it's covered by insurance because it's double the price plus of an MRI scan. But usually these devices are underutilized. We have lots of times we get requests over prostate cancer, and of course we tell people all the regular cancer prostate protocol, but of course we'd add the use of Vision Max, which is also for the prostate, hormone synergy to stop the conversion to estrogenic molecules that will grow the tumor, make sure adequate levels of vitamin D are present, micelle D3 and myco D2. Prostate cancer, if it's beyond, it has a high Gleason score, you want to be taking enzymes such as Inflamex, seroflozyme, and the enzymes to actually break down the fibronectin capsule, malignant block, ellagic acid, etc., that we do in a regular cancer protocol. Cancer of the prostate glands is similar, but there's a lot of oftentimes chemicals and heavy metals there, and xenoestrogens, so xenoestrogen detox, very important, and hormone synergy to get rid of these xenotoxins that make the tumor grow faster. So adequate levels of vitamin D are really important. If you're exposed to a lot of what I call fungal infections, and there's a lot of fungi that grow not only here in California and San Juan Key Valley, but like the coccidiomycosis, we have protocols that are going to knock out the fungus without the danger of powerful drugs, knock out candida from your gut, and heal you. We don't use the word cure. We talk about putting you into remission naturally without toxic effects. Back in a moment. If you have questions, 800-259-5791. Welcome back, and again, we have solutions for so many problems, and we have ways of actually monitoring to tell you how they work. We'll also tell you the kinds of conventional and advanced tests to actually validate what we're talking about. So it's evidence-based, integrative. And I get really upset when people talk about alternative medicine or natural or functional. No, this is molecular, genetic, tissue-based living pathology. It's not alternative. If anybody thinks this is alternative, they need to get a reality check. This is 21st century molecular and plasma physics-based quantum nuclear medicine, etc. This explains why people aren't getting better. The old model was, if we think a disease is present, we've got our little model from Brighton's physiology, we throw a drug at it. And that doesn't work. It doesn't fix the problem. That's why they chase people's blood pressure and they don't stop heart disease. That's why they give statin drugs. And they find out, well, it lowers cholesterol, but that really doesn't stop heart disease. We know that from our research that people like Eskimos can have cholesterol 4, 5, 10 times as high and don't have any heart disease. It's oxidative stress of fatty acids in their vessel walls and oxidative stress producing peroxynitrate and hydroperoxy radical. It's lack of the production of fatty acids converted to ATP and NADH. It's a lack of electron transport to convert that to biological energy in the cell through the electron cytochrome system in the cell. And that, of course, includes things like coenzyme Q10, CoQ10 ubiquinol, and things like carnitine in its various forms, including acetylcarnitine, propionyl L-carnitine, and our mitocarnitine, which is a glycine-stabilized propionyl L-carnitine, the glycine salt of it. So the situation is, I challenge any doctor, anybody out there, that we can carry on a dialogue, either live on air or any other way, to say, look, what is the disease? Let's go and look at it systematically as what the problem is. Whether it's toxemia of pregnancy, whether it's renal failure and we're trying to return renal function, whether we're trying to prep people for stem cell transplants, And it's very important to understand that we may not come up with the answers, but we'll come up with, we have really good questions. Tim, you have some updated news. Tell us what's going on.
Well, the war in Palestine continues. Over 80 are dead. The attacks continue. It appears that Israel's getting ready to go in a ground invasion. We'll see. So far, no additional strikes against Dimona. That may have been a warning strike yesterday, but I have to tell you that hitting Dimona is an incredibly dangerous thing to do, because it's not just that it's a reactor, it's a nuclear weapons assembly facility with an awful lot of plutonium and everything in there.
Exactly. In other words, if they hit it and they cause a massive cloud of radiation, it could cause evacuation of a good part of Israel. And, of course, the surrounding states as well.
The deaths would probably be in the 7 figures.
Right. Now, the situation is this. We have, and we'll just go down through the list here, and I want you to I'll try to be brief. We have Obama, who's acting as a criminal, bringing criminally, and planning this, along with his global bankster buddies and the CIA, criminally trying to flood the nation with illegals, not just from Central and South America, but from Muslim countries. We have the dollar about to be attacked by multiple countries, and we seem to have an attitude of wanting to tick them off. So we have the Organization of American States universally protesting our attitude toward Argentina and seizing public assets of the nation because they have a dispute over a derivatives-based debt, which is an illegal operation of our courts and our government. We have America supporting now a new terrorist organization called ISIS, which exceeds even Al-Qaeda in terms of danger, and we're giving them all kinds of weapons to not only attack Maliki, who's the guy we put in power. They're all our creation. We correct one side, we correct another side. We're now actually amalgamating together by default most of eastern Iraq, which is universally Shiite. And the tiny minority of Sunni, which we've supported, actually is only about 3 million. They've been armed to the teeth, so they're destroying a lot and killing a lot of people. But as Maliki gets jets, as they get weapon systems from Russia and Iran, it's not going to be a funny situation, because they also have Syria on the other side as a pincer going to squeeze down on ISIS. I can't see the long term that the Turks are going to go for the idea of attacking Iraq further, which is why they're not using their own public army.
And you have this situation in Israel. If it continues, it will probably involve Hezbollah, and that will involve Syria, and that will involve Iran, and then the whole neighborhood goes up.
Right, and of course Israel will...
That may be the intention of multiple things that are going on right now, because I think the Israelis hit a false flag to stir this up, and I think it was beyond the usual of wanting to kill a bunch of Arabs. I think what it really was to get a regional war going. That's very dangerous.
Yeah, Tim, one of the things that I've heard from my sources, which is extremely scary to me, is that the Israelis don't consider the nuclear or biological or chemical option, because most people don't realize that one of the most advanced research labs in the world for biological weapons development is in Israel, right by Dimona, by the way. And that their plan is what's called
the Iranians have one that's probably even bigger, but go ahead.
I know. The thing is that the Iranians have the biopreparat program from Russia, where the entire city of 250,000 scientists and technicians 250 kilometers north of Moscow were making weapons for over 70 years. So the best scientists and minds in Russia for many decades were developing these weapons, and they've shared with Iran and Syria. The problem I see is this, is that Israel plans on using the nuclear and biological and chemical option right away. So if they think that they're about to be attacked, they're going to try to do what they did in Six-Day War, which is to destroy the runways, attack jets on the ground, and then kind of blast away at any infrastructure. And the Israelis...
But you have to remember, I think the Arabs and the Muslims have gone down the road too many times with Israel. And, you know, they're people. I don't agree with the Muslim faith. I don't agree with a lot of their political philosophies. But people are people, and when they get to a certain point, they'll say, well, by God, we may die today, but we're going to take the so-and-sos with us.
Exactly, and I think...
That's a dangerous scenario, considering the weapon systems that are at play.
You have to understand that the Arab peoples, the Muslim peoples in the Middle East are very intelligent. These are some of the oldest cultures on earth. They will stick together because they'll literally take something off their mantelpiece and give it to you, or food right off their table, even if they're starving. They'll do anything for you, but if you cross them, you can't imagine the violence with which they'll meet you. And the blood and guts and the death of themselves and their entire family, they really don't consider that when it reaches the point where they know that death and destruction are inevitable. And when they see the behavior of the Israelis and the American government, which are duplicitous in terms of even supporting Maliki and now ISIS, the surrounding Muslim countries know that they're going to hurl everything they can, including fuel air bombs, biological weapons, personal terrorism, dirty bombs, anything they can. And there's no way that anybody who's not in a bunker above ground in Israel is going to survive this. That's why it says in the book of Revelation.
I've been saying that for years. Netanyahu is going to get all 6 million of the Jews in Israel killed.
Well, that's why it says the blood will be up to the horses' bridles. Now, if you know about a warfare and the imagery of the book of Revelation, what he's saying in the Bible, through John the Revelator, through Jesus who told him this, is that it'll be so bad that there'll be so much blood in the land that literally it'll be right up to the mouth of the horse and their bridle where they're in their teeth. And the horses are standing pretty tall, so you just imagine how much blood that is. It means that basically it'll be a miracle if there's any survivors, unless they're in a giant underground bunker, and they'll be, as I say, the living will envy the dead. And people say, "Oh, that can't happen."
Time will tell whether it's going to get that bad or not. But I'll say it has the potential.
Well, I think here's where the potential is. We're moving quickly toward a bail-in policy, which means that we're moving toward the derivatives collapse and the stock market collapse. We're moving forward a dollar devaluation and gold going crazy because they've been holding it back for more than a decade. If natural dilation of the currency had occurred, it would probably be worth about $8,400 an ounce of gold now.
That's why my family's in true gold mining stock.
Right.
It has the potential, we think, of increasing 10 or 15 times.
It's like the Czech Republic or Hungary before the revolution, where you could wallpaper your outhouse with notes from the national currency because it was so worthless, except to wallpaper your outhouse because nobody.
I have a collection of currency from then. It is really fascinating, but it was absolutely worthless. It literally was not worth the paper it was printed on.
Right, and people think, well, no, that bail-in couldn't happen. Well, they've actually publicly stated in Europe they want to actually seize people's private property, lock boxes, even the assets in their home, their jewelry even, 50% of their pension funds, and do it to keep the banks solvent. And they're talking about this. The Bank of Canada has already stated, the U.S. Treasury hasn't responded, and Congress hasn't responded.
Government buying for the bankers instead of government buying for the people?
Exactly. Well, the bankers basically think they own us, and if the republic is owned by the bankers, and they basically consider us as farm animals in their farm nation, which is really not a representative national republic or nation anymore.
Well, but that's their attitude, and they control the political class, and the American people had better wake